This is AM Agenda with Kieran Gilbert.
Good morning, welcome to the program. Treasurer Hockey says he won't flinch despite the fierce criticism of his budget. Other senior Liberals are reminding backbenchers it's a long game, but that hasn't stopped the internal criticism. This was Liberal MP and scientist Dennis Jensen critical this morning of the research funding decisions in the budget.
I just think it's, quite frankly, it's incoherent. The one side, the increase in funding, and the other side, the cuts. I think that probably the bigger problem than selling the budget has been the lead up to the budget. I think that we haven't adequately tilled the ground, for want of better terminology. We haven't adequately sort of laid out what the problem is.
Tight. And with me on the program this morning, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Josh Frydenberg, and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Shadow Treasurer, Ed Husick. Gentlemen, good morning. Tough to get momentum selling the budget when you've got your colleagues repeatedly coming out with their own critiques, and that was very critical, as you heard there, not just of the decision about research spending. He says, to clarify exactly the point he's making, that why have the Medical Research Fund when you're cutting funding to peak bodies like CSIRO, and further to that, as you heard there in that comment, he's critical of the overall budget strategy as well, essentially that you haven't prepared the electorate for the subsequent announcements that were made.
Well, let me deal with those two issues. Firstly, on medical research, we think this is a wonderful initiative, and it's not just us who think it. Actually, the medical research community also think that. Professor Doug Hilton from the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute for Medical Research, renowned throughout the world, said this is a game changer. And there have been similar comments from a number of leading scientists as they understand Australia needs to spend more on medical research. See, we'll have 7,500 Australians with dementia, coming on with dementia every week from 2050 onwards. I mean, we need to find cures to these types of illnesses, and putting more money into medical research is one way, and I think it has broad support. On the budget issue, in terms of selling the message, I think we have two key messages. One is that we are paying back Labor's debt, and the budget's papers show that $300 billion worth of Labor's debt will be paid back over the next 10 years, and will be reducing the budget deficit from $49.9 billion today to just $2.8 billion by 2017-18. The second key message is that we are boosting productivity, growth and jobs through a trifecta of policies. Firstly, investing in infrastructure, a record $50 billion, particularly in road infrastructure around Australia. Second, the massive investment in education and the higher education space and innovation. The Medical Research Future Fund is part of that, as well as 80,000 new spots for people going to higher education through diplomas or TAFEs. And finally, we're boosting workforce participation by providing incentives to elder Australians to get jobs coming off welfare into work by giving up to $10,000 to an employer to take them on, as well as we're trying to get younger people into work off welfare, and we're trying to get more women to stay in the workforce after having children. There are two key messages.
Well, at least Josh Frydenberg is 100% on message this morning. Mr. Dr. Jensen isn't, obviously, but your response to the points made there by Josh, because the bottom line is that this is going to be a repeated mantra from the coalition pointing to the Labor budget legacy.
Well, the legacy that they claim that they're dealing with, they loaded up. I mean, in my EFO, you saw, for instance, that 60% of the deficit and the increase in the deficit could be accounted to spending decisions that they've made and revenue decisions they walked away from. And so they're really trying to correct a whole lot of mistakes that they've made from the get-go. You know, for example, handing over $9 billion to the RBA, which, by the way, they still and I'm happy to stand corrected, they still haven't provided the RBA, though saying that they needed to desperately provide $9 billion. They've made those spending choices, and they're making pensioners pay for those decisions. They're unhinged from reality, and what they believe is working, the public is recoiling from, because they're clearly not in step with the expectations that they were creating before the election. And so what you're having now is you're having all these coalition MPs who are backgrounding the media because they figure there's no point raising their concerns in the party room. I mean, if you go and tell Tony Abbott something that he doesn't want to listen to, he just ignores the whole advice. What we're resorting to now in the coalition party room is hearing Joe Hockey tell, rugby war stories. Next week it'll be Tony Abbott reading Hardy Boy adventures, because no one figures that they can get their views heard by a Prime Minister that's out of step and out of touch with the community.
I want to go back to the point that Dennis Jensen made, and this is the substantive point that he was making last night in the Parliament and again this morning. He obviously feels very strongly about it. That while the Medical Research Fund is obviously going to be welcomed by the medical fraternity, that's a no-brainer, but what about the rest of research? His point is, why cut research to the CSIRO, to ANSTO, to other peak bodies, when he's saying that there is important research to be done in those areas as well, and science and research doesn't work like, you pick the area where you want to find the breakthrough and you're going to magically find it. He says his point is, often they find it by surprise, by having research across the board.
Well, organisations like CSIRO continue to be well supported by the government, but in fact, they're finding some of their own sources of funding now, Kieran, because many Australians will not know, but CSIRO was responsible for the development of Wi-Fi and has a patent and is making money through that. So I think some of our leading organisations have other forms of support, not just from the government. We're encouraging that, but the government stands ready to invest in research in record amounts, and medical research is an area where we do have a natural strength.
And so what do you say as well then, if we drill down on that? So Dr. Jensen's argument about the broader budget.
Sure.
Because he's saying that you just haven't prepared the electorate for what you've delivered, and it's the point made by Ed Husick here as well.
Well, I think you'll hear us continue to make the point that this budget is very necessary because it does those two things. It reduces government debt over time.
So you're trying to do it retrospectively, is that?
No, I think Joe Hockey's done a very good job in making this case, and so has Tony Abbott, but they'll continue to do so. You see, there is some confusion out there.
How come your colleagues don't think so?
Well, there's a bit of confusion out there, for example, around public hospital funding. But in fact, public hospital funding will go up by 40% over the next 4 years. There's a little bit of confusion about public school funding, but public school funding will actually go up under this budget by 37% over the next 4 years. If you look at higher education, that also has been slightly controversial, but as Christopher Pyne makes the very valid point, 80,000 new spots will be created because for the first time the Commonwealth is supporting people who are taking diplomas or sub-bachelor degrees.
All right, I want to come back
so it's very important to get those messages.
I want to get Ed's thoughts on that in just a moment. First, I want to just play a little bit of Scott Morrison on the Rich on Jones program last night, reminding his colleagues that it's a long game.
I mean, this is a long game in terms of this term of Parliament. And there's a series of issues, that's what I'm referring to, and it's going to go over the next 2 and more years until the next election. Now, Bill Shorten can get very excited about the first couple of weeks, but he has to be able to maintain these falsehoods and lies that he's putting out and maintain them over time. And I'm confident the Australian people will see through that.
And the thing is, it is a long game. The Labor doing all right at the moment, but if the government continues to make that point about and resonate on that issue about the debt and deficit problem, the budget repair job, you're seeing the business groups already saying they've got a gut full of the politics. This is the front of the AFR this morning. They're becoming on board.
I think the days of political parties thinking that they can do these type of things at the start of a parliamentary term and get away with it are long gone, and it's not just in recent memory, but you can go back in the past as well and see that if a political party comes in and behaves in a way that's counter to the expectations that they set before an election, it sets the tone for the parliamentary term and they have problems digging themselves out of it. Just on this issue of, when Josh was mentioning how the medical fraternity is supportive of the research fund, it reminds me of the way that Malcolm Turnbull reacted when Google commissioned research on the value of the NBN and the internet to Australia. He said it was like road builders arguing against tar. Of course the medical research fraternity is going to support medical research. My issue is, and I don't support the way they've set this up, is because they're slugging the sick of today to pay for the cures for the sick for tomorrow. If they're committed to research, and Dennis Jensen, their own coalition backbencher, has rightly pointed out, how can you cut from CSIRO, DSTO, the research councils, how can you cut all that and then claim that you're pro-research? And do it in a way through the GP tax that will affect Western Sydney, in particular my patch, patients, residents, where I've got doctors across Mount Druitt, Rooty Hill, and areas such as Emerton saying that they're seeing drops in people turning up to the doctor, which means they're not getting the things that they need to get fixed now, and when they avoid fixing health problems today, we all pay for it, financially but also personally down the track in trying to correct it. So it's a budget that really makes bad decisions for the long term, and it's built off lies, and the general public is paying for those lies.
But Kieran, can I just say, if my friend Ed wants to quote backbencher Dennis Jensen, let me quote shadow frontbencher
I'm not his friend.
Andrew
I don't
Lee.
want that quoted.
Let me quote shadow frontbencher.
We'll get it removed from
Andrew
the answer.
Lee.
This isn't live, right?
No, it's a tape. We're playing this after 9. Yeah.
Shadow frontbencher Andrew Lee, the Assistant Treasurer, who has come out publicly in the past in support of Medicare co-payments.
When he was at school, when he was at university.
No, when he was writing books before, the Labor Party grabbed him by the neck and said, "You stick to the party line."
Oh, you see how we work behind the scenes.
He said this is how it really should be. Medicare co-payments. He also talked about the deregulation.
He's since changed his mind.
Very fortunate for him. He's also changed his mind, has he, on higher education deregulation, which he came out and supported. He's your shadow assistant treasurer. He understands economics better than Wayne Swan or Chris Bowen, and he has told the truth. And he supports our policy, and he's described himself as a Liberal.
Let's get Ed's response, because I've got to go to a break, but Ed, quickly, your response to that.
Andrew Lee.
First, stop telling people I'm your friend. Second, it doesn't matter what people write previously. What matters is the party policy. What matters is the rubber on the road. And the thing is, you guys went to an election saying a whole stack of things, being all things to all people, and now you've let them all down. And people in my area have got to pay for the lies of your government. If it's a fuel tax, if it's a GP tax, if it's the underspend on hospital and schools, which is in your own budget papers,
you have no
you're
answers.
making our people pay for it.
Okay, we've got to go to a break, and I've just got to say I'm with Josh. We're all friends. Quick break, back in just a moment.
At Telstra, we've been listening, and we're starting something new. It's our personal service commitment, and people like me are going to make it famous. So now we're making it easier to get back in touch with the person you spoke to. And it's not just here, it's in-store, online and on the road, because at Telstra, we care about our customers.
Oh. And we want to be famous for it.
When we were young, we thought we were invincible.
Stretch to the line and Fraser wins gold.
I've changed a lot since winning gold, but keeping healthy and active is very important.
So if tired, aching legs or swollen feet and ankles slow you down, the Revitive Circulation Booster could be the safe, drug-free health solution you need. Revitive could help you regardless of your age or lifestyle. Visit these retailers for a free in-store trial and find the right Revitive for you.
Revive your day with Revitive.
We have so much stock in here, we buy in bulk, and the savings get passed on to the customer.
3-in-1 bathroom heater, only $55.38. Victor 2-stroke line trimmer, $189. Coir doormat, just $4.70.
Bunnings Warehouse.
Lowest prices are just the beginning.
If I told you there's an issue that costs Australian business $10.9 billion every year and likely affects 1 in 5 of your people, wouldn't you want to uncover it? And if you knew that every dollar invested in addressing it returned $2.30, could you ignore it? Make your people happier and more productive. Go to headsup.org.au.
Does your clothing clutter your whole house? Now you can turn any door into a closet instantly with the new over-the-door Wonder Hanger. Hang 5 garments at the same time. The over-the-door Wonder Hanger fits any door, and the soft felt lining won't damage the surface. It's perfect for ironing. Hang your suit, blouses, belts, everything stays perfectly pressed. Look for over-the-door Wonder Hanger in these stores. Also available original Wonder Hanger for clever clothes storage. Look for both at these leading retailers.
Our lowest prices can't be beat.
Insulation handy roll, only $27. Makita drill driver, $249. Compact channel and grate, just $14.40.
Bunnings Warehouse.
Lowest prices are just the beginning.
Centrum for Women, with adjusted levels of key nutrients like calcium and vitamin D, supporting benefits important for women, such as strong bones and healthy hair, skin and nails. Take Centrum for Women.
program brought to you by ANZ Smart Choice Super. See your super alongside your everyday banking.
This is AM Agenda. With me this morning, Ed Husick and Josh Frydenberg. Gentlemen, I want to turn now to the friends, as we discussed and agreed to.
So offensive, so very, very offensive.
This is appropriate. We're going to look now at the 18C issue, the Racial Discrimination Act. George Brandis forced to rethink Discrimination Act changes. That's the way that the Fairfax papers are covering that this morning, preparing to water down the controversial plan to scrap sections of Racial Discrimination Act. That's 18C. Now, is that true?
Well, we've had thousands of submissions, more than 5,000 submissions from the public.
5,000.
5,300, I think, submissions from the public.
Oh, that made it better.
And it obviously shows that there is, a deal of concern in the public about the changes. No doubt there are a few submissions that are in favour of them, but George Brandis, who's done a very good job to date in consulting with his colleagues, consulting broadly with stakeholders, he very positive feedback on that, is now going to consider these submissions, and a decision will be made in due course. But we do believe that the way that 18C is currently worded doesn't get the balance right, but no doubt when we put out our suggested reforms, there was a strong community response from some of my colleagues.
What do you want to see if it doesn't strike the balance? What do you want to see amended? Because as I understand it, the Cabinet submission of how the law should be worded is going to be put to the Cabinet in 4 to 6 weeks. Would you like no change?
No, well, that will be a decision for the Cabinet. And as members of either the front bench or of the back bench, we have an opportunity to put our views to our senior colleagues, which a number of people have done, and taking into account the history of this section. And don't forget, back when it first came into office, introduced by a former Labor government, Robert Hill in the Senate did make the coalition's concerns plain then.
Is it possible that there'll be no change?
I just can't give you a definitive answer on that, because that will be the subject, no doubt, of discussions by senior colleagues.
The Shadow Attorney-General, Mark Dreyfus, spoke to the media here in Canberra this morning. Let's have a listen.
We've had no answers from the Attorney-General or from Tony Abbott to the basic question: what is it that they want Australians to be able to say? What racist speech do they want Australians to be able to engage in that they can't now under the law? And I'm calling on Tony Abbott and George Brandis today to say today that they are stopping this attempt to give a green light to racism.
Ed Husick, that was the Shadow Attorney-General, your colleague, this morning. Isn't this a sign, though, if the government does water down the changes, that they're willing to consult rather than simply throw the law down and make everyone cop it, as we saw on a number of occasions with the former Labor government, that this is a government that's willing to take soundings and make decisions accordingly?
The community doesn't deserve a coward as Attorney-General. Like, if he believes that this
unfair,
needs to be changed, he should front up and he should say, we are dropping this dumb idea. He shouldn't leak it. He's taking the coward's way of leaking it. He should step forward and say, I was wrong. They built a case off one case in terms of Andrew Bolt's circumstances. They sought to upend laws that have served us well for 20 years. They've then put it out to the general public for their comment and had, as Josh has said, 5,300 submissions put forward, and now they recognise the error of their ways. Governments are not there to divide. Governments are there to bring people together. Governments aren't there to send the green light that it's okay to cause that division in the public.
You say
they should be bringing people together.
But just in the context of what you're saying there, that you think this is leaked, my understanding is that the Attorney-General's office believes that that there's nothing actually substantively new in these reports today, that they were always going to take the consultations, come back to the Cabinet and make the call.
This is what we're seeing as a coward's crab walk. I mean, they're walking away from this because they know communities from across Australia have spoken up very loudly and said, don't touch these laws.
But if you say coward,
isn't that a good thing?
Why not is it reasonable? Why not is it the government being reasonable?
Well, because it's simple. Everyone knew that there was no case, there was nothing compelling in what was being put forward arguing for reform. They couldn't. They only had one case, Kieran.
That's not.
And so as a result, well, then name the other ones.
The point is...
No. Hang on a second.
Josh.
If you're going to interrupt me, and you're going to say there are others, name them.
Listen, you don't go and call George Brandis a coward because he's gone out and taken broader consultations. You say, we have more members in the House of Representatives than you do. We're a better tester of the public opinion on these issues than sometimes you are.
That's so far.
And we have consulted, and we will deliberate, and we will come.
Okay, we've got to move on because I want to ask you about the Royal Commission. There were reports this morning that millions have been redirected from the Royal Commission into child sexual abuse, into the other inquiries, including the Pink Bats inquiry. What do you say to this and suggestions the government has moved money from a very wide-ranging inquiry, the child sex inquiry, from institutional arrangements like the churches and so on, to what the Labor Party and groups say are a political inquiry with the Pink Bats?
Let's put a few facts on the table. Firstly, no money has been taken away from the Royal Commission to do its job. There was an underspend in two areas, including a capital underspend and including a legal aid underspend, and that money was reallocated as normal practice in budgets. But if the Royal Commission needs any further financial support, of course the government will be the first to provide it, because this is extremely important, this Royal Commission. It's extremely important that the facts come out, that the people are given their time to air their grievances, and that the people who are responsible are actually...
So if they need the money, if the Commissioner needs the money, it will be there?
Absolutely.
Nice try.
Well, that's a guarantee.
Nice try. They've made a decision to reallocate funds from a commission looking at child abuse to a political exercise. But let me just contrast what the government line is against another line they use. When Conservative governments refused to sign on to Gonski, $1.2 billion sitting there, they refused to take it and we reallocated it. They called it a cut. So how is it that Josh can say with a straight face today, oh, no, this isn't reallocation, we just, there was an underspend and so we've used it elsewhere? So how is it Chris Pine can say one thing about schools funding and then you can have Josh say another? Actually, it doesn't fly.
Hey, mate, we put an extra 37% of government funding into schools, including $1.2 billion that you didn't actually allocate.
We've got to go.
So
Josh
we're the better
Frydenberg,
school funder.
Ed Husick, have a good day.
Thanks.
We continue this off air.
A quick break, and you can do that. No problem. A quick break on AM Agenda, back in just a moment.
And let me just...